All right, so let's dive into one of the most intense letters in the entire New Testament, the Book of Jude. Now, it's super short. I mean, you could miss it if you blink. But don't let its size fool you. This little letter packs a serious punch. It's an urgent warning that's been ringing out for nearly 2,000 years.
And here's what's so wild about it. The author, Jude, who is probably one of Jesus' own brothers, he didn't even want to write this letter. He was all set to write something completely different, a really joyful letter all about the amazing salvation they all shared. But then, something happened. A crisis hit that was so dangerous he had to slam on the brakes, scrap his happy letter, and write this urgent appeal instead.
So here's our game plan for unpacking this. We'll start with that sudden change of plans. Then we'll dig into the real danger here, the threat from within. After that, we'll look at some echoes of past rebellion, explore what it means to contend for the faith, and finally, we'll see why this is just such a timeless call to discernment for all of us.
All right, so let's get right into the heart of the problem. To get what Jude is saying, you have to understand this one crucial thing. The threat wasn't coming from outside. This wasn't about persecution. No, the danger was way more sneaky because it was already inside the house. I mean, Jude does not mince words here. He says these people have secretly slipped in. Just think about that imagery for a second. They didn't kick down the front door. They snuck in the back. They look the part, they talk the talk, but they are secretly undermining everything from the inside out.
So how would you even spot these people? Well, what's fascinating is Jude focuses less on a checklist of wrong doctrines and more on their corrupt character. First off, they take the beautiful idea of God's grace and twist it into a get-out-of-jail-free card to live however they want. They deny the authority of Jesus in their day-to-day lives. They can't stand anyone having spiritual authority over them, and instead just follow their own gut. And of course, they're experts at buttering people up to get what they want.
But Jude doesn't just give us a list, oh no. To show how truly dangerous these people are, he becomes a poet. He paints these vivid, unforgettable word pictures to expose what's really going on beneath the surface.
First, he calls them hidden reefs. Okay, so these love feasts were basically community meals, a time of fellowship. Jude is saying these guys show up to the potluck, but they're like a sharp rock just under the water. You can't see it, but it will absolutely shipwreck your faith. What a terrifying image for a danger hidden right in plain sight.
His next metaphor is just perfect. He calls them clouds without rain. You know that feeling, right? On a scorching hot day, you see dark clouds roll in, you're desperate for that downpour, and then nothing. They just drift away. That's these teachers. All promise, zero delivery. They look deep, but they'll leave you spiritually thirsty. He keeps going. He calls them fruitless autumn trees. I mean, autumn is the time for a harvest, right? But on these trees, there's nothing. And it's actually worse than that. He says they're uprooted and dead. They're totally disconnected from the source of life itself.
And this last one is just chilling. He calls them wandering stars. See, in the ancient world, sailors navigated by the fixed stars. They were reliable. But wandering stars, what we call planets, they seem to move erratically. You could never use them to find your way. Jude is saying these teachers offer no true guidance. They're just on a path to darkness, and they'll drag you down with them.
Now, Jude isn't done yet. After this powerful metaphors, he reaches back into history. He's basically saying, hey, if you think this is a new problem, think again. He wants to show that this pattern of rebellion is as old as time, and the consequences, they've always been severe.
And he brings out the big guns, 3 major examples from the Old Testament. He reminds them of the Israelites who God saved from Egypt but who were destroyed in the wilderness because of their rebellion. He talks about angels who abandoned their proper place and are now held for judgment. And of course, he brings up Sodom and Gomorrah, the ultimate cautionary tale. His point is crystal clear. God does not let this stuff slide.
Then he zooms in on 3 of history's most infamous rebels. He says these teachers are walking in the way of Cain, driven by jealousy. They're rushing into the error of Balaam, who would do anything for money, and they're repeating the rebellion of Korah, who arrogantly defy God's chosen leaders. Jude's laying out a very clear, very destructive path.
So, right in the middle of all of this, Jude does something that makes a lot of modern readers kind of pause and scratch their heads. He actually quotes from a book that isn't in our Bible, the Book of Enoch. And the question that always comes up is, why? What's going on there?
Well, it's actually a brilliant communication strategy. He wasn't trying to say, hey, add this book to your scriptures. Not at all. He was using stories and traditions his audience already knew and respected to make his point hit home. It's like a speaker today quoting a line from a famous movie. You're not saying the movie is sacred, you're just using a shared reference point to make your message connect.
Okay, so after all that intense warning, you'd think this letter would be a total downer. But it's not. Jude makes this amazing pivot from defense to offense. He doesn't just leave them with a list of dangers. He gives them a positive, proactive command for what they need to do.
He tells them to contend for the faith. Now that word contend can make us think of fighting, of getting into arguments, but that's really not the main idea here. It's much more like a construction project. It's a call to actively build up, to strengthen, and to protect the health of the community and the truth of the gospel. So how do you do that? He gives them a beautiful 4-step blueprint. First, he says, build your lives on the solid foundation of your faith. Then, build yourselves up by praying in the Holy Spirit. Third, keep the whole structure safe and secure in God's love. And finally, keep looking forward, waiting for the mercy of Jesus. That's how you build a community that can withstand anything.
And all of this brings us to the big question, right? What does this ancient letter mean for us today? Why does this warning, written almost 2 millennia ago, still matter? Well, because its core message is absolutely timeless.
And here it is. If you take one thing away from the Book of Jude, let it be this. The most reliable sign of what a person truly believes isn't what they say, it's how they live. The problem with those false teachers wasn't just flawed arguments, it was a corrupt lifestyle. Jude is basically screaming that genuine faith isn't just an idea you agree with, it's a reality that transforms your entire life.
But after all of that fire, after all that warning, Jude doesn't end with fear. He ends with one of the most beautiful and hopeful sentences in the entire Bible. He finishes by praising the God who is able to keep you from stumbling and who will bring you into his presence with joy. In the end, Jude's ultimate message isn't about our ability to fight off danger, but about God's powerful ability to hold on to us.